How's it going? Absolutely everyone. I hope you're having a really good day. Today, we're going to go over this article by Waleed the Flog Ali. He has weighed in on the Adam Goods issue. A number of people might have seen this, go through this on my live stream on Monday, but I wanted to go through it on my own, just in a standalone video. So let's just go through that right now. Just a quick message. Whether it's an algorithm hiding content or outright deletion, internet censorship is on the rise. Please consider following me on free speech websites Gab, Minds, and BitChute. I'm constantly posting content, and they are a great way to stay notified of uploads. Can't wait to see you there. Right, so he says, Trump's racist tweets have parallels to the abuse of Adam Goods. So apparently just booing him is abuse. Booing him for things that he actually did. Sort of gives you the tone of where he's going with this article. So he starts here. Alas, too often these four women, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Ayanna Pressley, Ilhan Omar, and Rashida Tlaib, are reduced to their respective religions, ethnicities, and sex. They are deemed interesting primarily because they are women of colour, rather than the remarkably assertive policy platform they offer. Well, just because something's remarkably assertive doesn't mean it's any good. Yes, AOC is extremely assertive with her policies, but they are idiotic policies. That said, it's not anyone else who are reducing them to their religions, ethnicities, and sex. It's them. It's the Democrats. The Democrats are promoting these women because they are women of colour and because she's a Muslim. That's why they're doing it. The left are the ones who are using their identity characteristics like religion, ethnicity, and sex in order to promote them. So the idea that this is us or people who are not communists, as these women are, the idea that it's us doing that to them is ridiculous. It's a lie, but Waleed Aly is a liar. So it's to be expected. And he says, I think that identity first framing suits Trump just fine. I'd rather not take that bait. Which is wrong. Because Donald Trump is anything but pushing the identity as in those characteristics first line. He's not doing that. Much to his detriment, mind you. He's not actually sticking up for his own people. He's just doesn't think that way. I don't think he even acknowledges that. He probably instinctively understands somehow, but he doesn't actually acknowledge it in public at all. It's them placing his arguments in his mouth. Like they're making a false narrative around the way Donald Trump acts. And again, it's a lie. And he said, I'd rather not take that bait, which is ironic because Waleed Aly is the one laying the trap with this whole article. And he says, in a strange way, it reminds me of the Adam Goods saga. To be sure, there are some important differences. Trump was hurling naked racist insults at the four women, while Goods was subject to a more coded abuse whose racist elements had to be deduced rather than merely quoted. So let's actually have a look at what Donald Trump said. So interesting to see. Progressive Democrat congresswomen who originally came from countries whose governments are a complete and total catastrophe, the worst, most corrupt, and inept anywhere in the world, now loudly and viciously telling the people of the United States, the greatest and most powerful nation on earth, how our government is to be run. Why don't they go back and help fix the totally broken and crime-infested places from which they came, then come back and show us how? It is done. These places need your help badly. You can't leave fast enough. I'm sure that Nancy Pelosi would be very happy to quickly work out free travel arrangements. So somehow that's Ray for him to say, well, why don't you go and fix the countries that you came from and come back and show us how? I'm not exactly sure how. Well, actually, it's Ray because we all know what Ray means. It's just an anti-white racial slur. It just means it's just a means to shut up people because they have European heritage. It's an anti-white racial slur. And the idea that there was any abuse of goods is wrong, but that all the criticism was coded? I mean, give me a break. It wasn't coded at all. People were very clear about why they were booing Adam Goods. I'm sure some people claimed that it wasn't racial, and I'm sure for a lot of people it most likely wasn't. But there was an element of race in the criticism of him, but it wasn't being critical of him because he is half Aboriginal and identifies as Aboriginal. The criticism was because he insulted our people. And I know that a lot of Australian men and women probably either they wouldn't consciously understand that, or maybe they wouldn't admit that. But what happened is he did attack the Australian people, as in the ethnically Australian people, white European people who are assimilated into Australian culture. And what he's saying here is that us defending ourselves after our own people have been insulted is somehow ray-ray, which again lends credence to the fact that the term racist is really just another way of saying shut up to people of European heritage. And Trump is dealing with sworn political foes engaged in a formal partisan battle, while Goods was conscripted into a conflict he never chose. That's a lie. A flat-out, bald-faced, in-your-face lie. Anyone who was paying attention to the saga when it happened between 2013 and 2015 would know that that's a lie. And if you didn't realise it, all you have to do is go and watch the documentary that brought this up, The Final Quarter, and you'll see that Adam Goodes made himself the face of anti-racism in Australia. He wasn't conscripted, he volunteered himself to be an activist. That's not conscripted. So this is a lie from Waleed Aly, and then he continues again. In short, Trump has treated the Democrat congresswomen in a way that violates the terms of legitimate combat. Goodes wasn't voluntarily in combat to begin with. So what are the terms of legitimate combat? He's not allowed to criticize them. He's not allowed to say, well, look, if you think America's so bad, why don't you go to your home country and fix that and then tell us how? How does that violate the terms of legitimate combat? What are the terms of legitimate combat? Oh, I know. The terms of legitimate conduct or combat, according to gaslighting liars like Waleed Aly, is that apparently, if you are of European ancestry, then you are not allowed to criticize anyone who isn't. That's what he says. That's his terms of legitimate combat. So, sorry mate, sorry not sorry, but I don't accept those, and who said you write the terms anyway? And the idea again that Goodes wasn't voluntarily in combat to begin with, again, a flat out lie. He is lying here, and since lying in this manner imposes a cost on our society, it is parasitism, it should actually be illegal. We should be allowed to sue him for these lies. But just as in Goodes' case, it's not as simple as colour. Trump isn't telling those who stand under banners screaming blacks or Latinos for Trump to go back, just as critics of Goodes love to point out that there were more than 70 Indigenous players in the AFL who weren't getting booed at the time. Yeah, we point it out because it's the truth. It's the truth. Adam Goodes himself didn't even get booed until after he played 300 games, I think it was. He won 2 Brownlow medals. He's a champion of the game. He was a respected football player. He got booed because of the things he did and said in public. No other reason, really. Sure, you can argue that there was a racial element to it, but it wasn't him getting booed because he's Aboriginal. That is flat out wrong. And if you are going to imply that, you're either wrong or deliberately lying. But anyway, he says that sort of thing is falsely offered as a defense against the charge of racism, because it pretends racism can only exist if the prejudice in question applies to every single member of a race. That if something is not exclusively about skin colour, then race is not a factor at all. But that's almost never how it works. The implication here being, it doesn't matter how nice you are to other non-white people, if you're critical of even one white person or non-white person for something that they did, then you're a racist. You're a horrible person. You can have 10 really good black mates, but if you're mean to even a single black person, then you are a terrible person who apparently hates all black people. I mean, that is a ridiculous standard to have. And the idea that something, if something's about race, or if there's a racial element, that automatically makes it racist, that is ridiculous. He would never, ever, ever apply that standard to anyone who wasn't white. Think about that. And then this is really the cusp of this little section here. More often, racism lives in the double standards that mean someone gets attacked in a way a white person never would, even if they were to behave in the same way. What a flat out inversion of reality. Think about it like this. Imagine if Adam Goodes, rather than identifying with his Aboriginal ancestry, he can do that if he wants, but imagine if he hadn't done that, he'd instead identified with his Scottish heritage and said he was a proud, white, Australian man of Scottish heritage, and he was really proud of his strong Scottish ancestry, and he completely ignored his Aboriginal ancestry, and then whenever there was a group of Aborigines in the crowd, they all booed him whenever he got the ball. Do you think the AFL would side with Adam Goodes, or they would side with the Aborigines? Imagine if a white player did the same thing. Imagine if a white player did what Adam Goodes did and said to Aboriginal people, remember whose land you're on. Think about that. Imagine if a white person had said that the Aboriginal flag is racist, which, I mean, it's explicitly a flag for a race of people, and when these communists supply that to whites, that's racist apparently, but it's not when you apply it to non-whites. I mean, doesn't that just highlight the issue here? So yeah, there is a big double standard. It's just not in the way that Waleed Aly, the lying gaslighter, would have you believe. And here's where it's all leading to. This is why he's lied so blatantly throughout the piece. This is the big conclusion. This is the big lie that he wants you to believe. So, the thing that they have in common is not that they are separatists seeking to isolate themselves from the nation, it's that they are deeply and centrally embedded in the national institutions. They do not contribute to public conversations as outsiders, but emphatically as insiders. They assume they belong and behave accordingly, and that's exactly what makes them threatening, because they imply a national identity that is broad enough to include them. So, what he's arguing here, what he's trying to say is that, oh, wait a minute, America and Australia, you're not a people. Americans and Australians, you're not actually a people bound by heritage, blood and soil. What you actually are is just anyone who lives in the territory. And doesn't matter where you are in the world, then you come in here and you're Australian or you're American. And look, now they're contributing as insiders. And if you think that's a threat, well, then you're a racist. When in reality, it actually is a threat to us. It actually is a threat to our people. It is a symptom of the replacement of white European people in our own homelands. Waleed Aly dismisses any worry about that as somehow making us Ray-Rays. But in reality, we really should be worried about it because it is altering our culture. It's making us not a country anymore. We're not going to be a unified country anymore. Because everyone knows who isn't a complete muppet or a liar that proximity plus diversity, racial and ethnic diversity, equals conflict. Waleed Aly wants you to ignore that fact. He doesn't want you to see that fact. Yet, he's still operating on an ethnic nationalist level. He understands the ethnic nationalist arguments and he's trying to say, don't go there. Whatever you do, don't go there. If you go there, then you're a bigot, man. You're the worst person ever. Were these people true identity radicals, that wouldn't be necessary. They'd have excluded themselves and would thereby cease to be a national identity threat. That's correct. Because if they were identity radicals, as in, let's say, Ilhan Omar was radical African identitarian who wanted a homeland for the Somalian people, she would actually essentially be on our side in terms of the European nationalists, European ethnic nationalists, people who understand that nationality isn't just a piece of paper. People who understand that a nation is about ethnic ties and the land that you're on. If they understood that, they would be on our side because they'd be arguing the same things as us. So, what he's arguing here, he's actually correct. He's correct by accident. He's right, but he's trying to downplay our arguments and just dismiss them offhand because they don't suit his narrative. He wants to push multiculturalism, which is just conflict and ethnic genocide of European peoples. And he's saying that if they were actually advocating for their own people, then they wouldn't be furthering that agenda. They'd actually be on our side, like I mentioned. And he finishes up, which is just typical Waleed Aly lie here. The people most targeted in this way are those who work the hardest to build bridges between unreconciled worlds. Yeah, because Adam Goodes going on TV and saying, man, we gotta end racism, remembering racist is just a word used to shut white people up. Adam Goodes pointing out a 13-year-old girl in the crowd at a football game for calling him an ape, not because of his race, but because he's hairy. Look at my arms, like if you can see them there. I'm hairy. I've been called an ape quite a lot because I'm very, very hairy. And let's just face it, all human beings are apes. Seriously, we're all apes. We're part of the great ape family. Our closest relative is the chimpanzee. Like, literally, that's the case. And he's gone, oh, she called me an ape. Therefore, Ray, I mean, that's just a load of crap. He has not worked to build bridges between unreconciled worlds. He could do that. I'll mention how he could do that in an upcoming video, which covers the whole saga, or actually, it's sort of a review of the final quarter. But he could actually build bridges. He could become a figure of reconciliation. Seriously, he could do it very, very effectively as well. But you don't do that by pointing the finger at people and calling them names. It's just not how it's done. It's just going to get people's backs up. And guess what happened when they tried to do that? He got booed even harder. And the idea that AOC and these 4 women are building bridges, no. They are most definitely not building bridges. They are pushing their own version of intersectionality. Some people call it identity politics, but intersectionality is better, which is a politics that divides us against them and puts white people essentially at the bottom of a racial hierarchy. That is not working hard to reconcile unreconciled worlds. That is doing the exact opposite. That is doing everything you can to divide us based on things like ethnic heritage and race and religion and even sex. So, Waleed Aly, as we all know, is a clear liar. And this article is rock solid proof that he still does nothing but lie and gaslight. That said, I really hope you enjoyed the video. Please share it around, because there is absolutely no way that YouTube are going to promote my content. They suppress all independent content these days, so I rely on you, my fan, my viewer, to share my content with people, tell people about my channel, all that kind of thing. I can't grow without your help. The painting behind me is still for sale. I don't know whether I'll ever sell it, but I'm going to leave it up anyway. Who cares? Send me an email if you feel like purchasing it, and I'll see ya when I see ya.